Okay, we're live on YouTube. Who should I send host back to?
Me, Ali Fasio.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hello.
Won't let me get on the computer, so I'm using my phone for now.
Well, I thought maybe you were rocking and rolling like you were on a roller coaster there for a while, Mike.
Well, I got 4 different emails, and sometimes this stuff switches and sometimes it don't.
That is true. You are so right.
I'm trying to check out of my, and and obviously my cell phone is 4 times as smart as I am, but this computer is twice as smart.
Well, if there were ever a meeting to have to watch on your cell phone, this one appears to be pretty painless. So it's probably a good one to have that problem on.
Oh, I just can't believe it. I'm dang, man.
Well, Mike, your camera on your phone, though, is good.
No, it's the picture. It's the person in the picture that looks good.
Mike, don't push your luck, honey.
UGTV will be starting in about 30 seconds.
Hint, hint, Mikey.
I like this team. Come on, dang it.
All right, we're live on UGTV.
Okay, I think that means we are ready to go. Ms. Cobbins, does that mean we are ready to go?
It is, Commissioner. The clerk's office is ready for you.
Thank you very much. So, good evening. And before I call the meeting to order, I do want to do our usual announcement these days that due to COVID-19, some committee members, staff, and public are attending remotely by Zoom, as well as some on site. And all participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking so that we can avoid background noise. During the meeting, make sure you announce yourself by name and title when you speak so the public that's observing knows who's speaking. And this is critical given the number of remote participants. It's also current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19, in-person public comment has been suspended unless otherwise required by law. Public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments are included in records of our meetings. I will now call our meeting of Public Works and Safety Standing Committee to order. And would the clerk call the roll, please?
Roll call. Groneman,
Here.
Philbrook,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Bynum.
Here. There are no revisions on tonight's agenda, and the first item is approval of minutes from November 16. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve our minutes. Roll call on that, please.
Roll call. Groneman,
Aye.
Philbrook, Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
And Philbrook, I got your wave there.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. We have one item on our committee agenda tonight. It's an information-only update on our Community Connect program and our body worn cameras. And I see that we have Acting Chief Waldeck and Deputy Chief Anderson. Do we have Chief York? Yes, we do.
Yes.
So, hi, thank you. Thank you. Hi, good to see you.
Thank you.
I will turn it over to our police department to bring us our presentation, please.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen here, and we're going to talk about the updates for the body worn camera, as well as the Community Connect program. And Deputy Chief Ken Anderson is going to give the presentation on the body worn camera, and Deputy Chief Waldeck is going to give the presentation on the Community Connect, and we'll answer your questions from there. Are you guys seeing the my screen?
Yes.
All right. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, Chief, go ahead and go to the first or the second slide. There you go.
Go ahead, Kent.
Deputy Chief Ken Anderson. So kind of our goals for the whole body worn camera project, in-car camera project was to improve transparency, promote accountability, help in evidence collection, deter criminal and uncooperative behavior, and assist officers with testifying in court. Next slide. So we ended up going with Watchguard, as we spoke about the last time we met. So in each car, there will be 3 cameras. There'll be 2 mounted on the windshield, and that's the main one we're looking at here, which the top camera is like a standard view camera, and the bottom camera is like a panoramic view. It gives you a wider view of what's taking place. Like if you were on a car stop, you definitely get a wider angle than the standard camera. And then we also have a camera that goes in the prisoner transport section of the vehicle. And those 3, and then the officer will also have on the body worn camera. So there's actually, I guess, 4 cameras in a patrol car if it's a one-man car. Next slide. So this was our total budget amount. I'm sure you're aware of. So the contingency fund, we've had to dip in it a little bit, and I think we probably have to. We found that during our employees doing the redaction, that we'll probably need a new computer for that because it's just too slow on the server that we currently possess. So that's probably one thing we'll have to look at. So we bought the 303 body worn camera kits, 101 in-car cameras, and 2 prisoner transport vehicles, which we've gotten 1 installed and we're still waiting on the second. And then we've also ordered a new camera system for the DUI room at the county jail, which we haven't got that in yet. And so we're still waiting. And once we receive that, we'll have that installed. In our body worn camera policy, we also have retention policies, which for all felony crimes that occur in our city will be 5 years. Misdemeanors, traffic stops where citations are issued, which we consider a misdemeanor, will be 1 year. Vehicle pursuits is 5 years. And calls where maybe we just have a citizen contact and no enforcement action is taken, that's going to be 120 days. And then our officers are required by policy every day when they go into service, they have to test their body worn camera to make before they go in service. So those are the test videos. Those videos will be deleted within 24 hours. And that's just to save server space. I think right now we started the second week issuing the cameras the second week of January. I think we're up to 11,000 videos, and that's with deleting the test videos. So that's 11,000 videos in approximately a month and a half. Next slide. Oh, one thing I forgot on the redaction, any crime that we designated as a case, like for instance, that would be a homicide, or we have somebody arrested for some other crime, those videos will be kept up until we get a destruction order from the district attorney's office. So those will be kept forever until they say we can delete those videos. So our infrastructure, as you all remember, we had Unite Fiber is the infrastructure that we decided to go with. All of that has been completed except for animal service. They're supposed to be in the process of getting there. And since they were kind of out of the way, they were the last ones, but they should be on board before, I would say, summer. So all the body worn cameras have been issued out, with the exception of 3 officers that were on vacation or some other type of leave. And the in-car installations, we have done 63 of the total 101 so far. And part of the reason for that is we have ordered 20 new cars that should be coming in hopefully within the next couple months, and they will have the cameras installed in them. We didn't want to install the cameras in cars that we thought we may get rid of because it's like $15,000 to install them and then to rip them back out. So we didn't want to waste money in that process. So we're about probably a little over halfway with the in-car cameras for the vehicles. Next slide. We put some frequently asked questions for the community, and we just thought we would answer those. Are the cameras always recording? No, that would create privacy issues, and I don't know that you can buy a server that large to store all this video data. How does it work? The camera is activated 2 ways. The body-worn cameras are synced to the cameras in the vehicle that they are riding that day. So when they sync them in and say they get out of the car really quick and they talk to a maybe an individual that's intoxicated outside the vehicle. If he turns his body worn camera, that will also activate his in-car camera. The other example would be if an officer does a car stop, turns on his lights and siren in the vehicle, that will also trigger his body worn camera to turn on. Next slide. Can an officer turn the body worn camera off? And the answer is yes. But when he turns the camera off, he has to give a reason to why the camera is being shut off. The other examples that we use to respect the dignity of someone else when they have expectation of privacy exists, and the examples are locker rooms, dressing rooms, restrooms, things of that nature. If anything that you might think that would not be good for a audio record or a video recording would also not be recorded. Recordings are limited to investigation use. So if they were to go into a hospital, we advise them to turn the camera off until they're in the room that the subject is in. If they're having a procedure done, we will not record that. But if we're talking to them and there's nothing being done at that time, we will record them. And then we obviously won't record conversations with confidential informants. Next slide. Can the officer edit the video or manipulate the recording? And the answer is no. They can view the recordings in some incidents after a call if they need their memory refreshed, but there's no way that the videos are uploaded directly to the server, and there's no way that they can change, modify the videos. Does an officer have to stop a recording if I ask him to do so? And no, not while he's on an official investigation. If you want to have a general conversation, you can ask the officer to shut it off. But if he is in a public place, he is not required to shut off his camera. Next slide. Will members of the media be granted viewing of broadcast permission videos or audio recordings? And basically what we did, we gave the authority of the chief of police can release any video that he chooses to do so. If I think I've been treated unfairly, can I get a copy of the video to review? Per Kansas state statute, we have to allow, for a fee, allow citizens to watch the video. And what we've done is we have next requests set up on the police department website, as well as the unified government website, they can go to next request, and it's like same as an open records request. They can go and then ask to view the video. And then at this time, we're going to internal affairs. They can go up there, watch the video, but they cannot record any of the video that's on the screen because it still there could be court proceedings going on, and we just don't want that video out there. Next slide. How does the body-worn camera initiative relate to other police efforts? Colonel Waldak is going to go into some of the other projects with Community Connect and Ring and those types of things. And she'll be going over those here shortly. Next slide.
I think that's it for you, Kent. So is there any questions at all about the body worn camera system?
Chief, I've got a question going back to the public's right to view the footage. So based on what the slide says, and I don't know the answer, so you'll have to help me. It is not considered an open record under the Kansas statute to the degree that we can limit it here to these categories.
I'll let Casey Myers, I think's on here, and she was going to answer any of the legal questions if she can answer that.
Yeah, I think that slide might be slightly misleading. It's an open record, and so we would consider any exception that might apply. There's a specific section in the statute that if the person is a subject of the recording, or a parent or legal guardian, or an attorney, or an heir at law, that those people shall have an opportunity to review it regardless of the status of the case. They just don't get a copy of it. So those people will always be able to review the audio or video in those situations. Every other request we're going to treat like a normal open records request. And so it might be released. It just depends on if an exception under the Open Records Act applies. For example, if it's a homicide case and it's pending investigation and they make an open records request, the police department wouldn't release the actual video. But if, you know, an heir at law wanted to watch it, the police department will have to make arrangements for them to review that within 20 days.
Okay. Okay, what other questions do folks have?
One thing I forgot to add is we will be doing our academy class. I think we're issuing their cameras March 19th, and that will be another big drop of cameras.
Mhm. All right. Okay, Chief, it looks like we're ready to move on to the next section.
All right, Pam, go ahead. You're up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pam Waldeck, and I'm going to talk about our community-based camera initiatives. Currently, we are running a couple different community-based camera initiatives that are, some are grant funded and some are federated from other communities, including BPU's traffic cameras. Through the TIPS grant, we were able to get several fixed mobile license plate readers, and we also have access to the Board of Public Utilities traffic and intersection cameras currently. And then also through the Ring Camera program, which is privately owned, we work with Ring Camera to access neighborhood cameras. Next slide. Our goals for these camera initiatives are to improve transparency in investigations, promote accountability of everyone involved, support evidence collection, deter criminal activity and uncooperative behavior, and assist officers with reporting and their court testimony. We have several different camera programs going, and they're all supported by the Criminal Intelligence Unit, who has access to all of these cameras that we have federated with. This streamlines our data sharing with other departments, and currently Chief York is working on MOUs with other public agencies to access cameras in other jurisdictions, which help us with investigations. And people, as we know, crime doesn't have borders. So often some of our criminals are committing crimes in other jurisdictions, and these cameras help us to solve collectively all those crimes. Next slide. Last year, we created the Criminal Intel Unit camera section. That includes a detective and a patrolman who both will be LEVA certified, which is a national certification, Law Enforcement Emergency Services Video Association. And there is a 4-class process for certification. Our detective will receive the highest certification, which will be a forensic video analyst. And our patrolman will receive a certification of forensic video technician. And what they will do is they will go out and get video from businesses and other homes that are cooperating with us in providing video, or any video that we get on a search warrant. And then they will work with the detectives and other jurisdictions to share that video and use that video to the best advantage for solving crimes. And like in officer involved shootings, they would work with the investigators in officer involved shootings and other criminal elements. Next slide. Currently, we have traffic traffic intersection surveillance. We have access to 18 Kansas City, Missouri fixed intersection cameras. Those are non-LPR, which means they're just traffic cameras. They don't capture any data from a license plate. And we are working towards gaining access to 40 to 50 more Kansas City, Missouri cameras. Next slide. We currently have 59 fixed license plate, or I'm sorry, we will have 59 fixed license plate readers upon completion. The Intel Unit, Violent Crime Task Force, and our training officers currently have access to that data. And as we move through the training portion of this, we hope to move to where every officer will have access to this data. So basically what that means is when someone calls and reports a crime and gives a tag number, the officers are able to see where that tag has hit LPRs throughout the city and with any other LPRs in any other jurisdiction that we're federating with. This integrates with Google Earth so they can see a map of where the officers have, or I'm sorry, where the tag number in question has been. We are also expecting to get the Brief Cam investigation software, which will help us analyze that data. Next slide. This is a list of fixed and mobile LPRs. And actually what a mobile LPR is an LPR that we can, and LPR stands for license plate reader. We can place that on police cars and have them drive through areas and capture tag data. And this is a list of where we have fixed LPRs on the right. Some intersections have more than one LPR, so we can capture several different directions. And on the left, there's a list of what's in process and what is complete, such as cameras, and PTZ stands for pan, tilt, zoom, and how many of those we have operational. Next slide. Ring camera, which most of you are probably aware of. Ring cameras are what residential neighborhoods use often. It replaces your doorbell, and it can capture who's at your front porch. Some people have floodlights, and it captures who's in their driveway and things like that. And then it talks to the neighborhood social media app and also communicates with the police department. We are in a cooperative agreement with Ring, and we are able to gather that data and have used it to solve several cases. Next slide. Our ultimate goal for the Community Connect program is to have privately owned cameras which are shared, which is a little bit more, the cameras are different than the Ring camera, and they would be on our network through a server, and community citizens and businesses alike would be able to get the cameras and then get on our network and share their video with us. That will involve agreements and some more planning, but that is our ultimate goal, is to move to the Community Connect program. And that will connect neighborhoods all over Kansas City, Kansas, as well as other jurisdictions. Next slide. Private System Federation, that's something that we're currently working towards, connecting with like the Legends, connecting their cameras to the police department. So we have real-time view of Legends cameras or other corporations' cameras on this same network for the Community Connect. And that, I believe, concludes our presentation. If anybody has any questions about Community Connect.
So committee members, are there questions for our police department about these programs? I know that. Go ahead, Commissioner Philbrook.
No, I was just going to say, thanks, Pam. I've been hanging on the poor police department practically since I was elected in 2013 about this and bugging people and everything. And so improvements in our fiber optics and all of these other sort of things, that we were able to have more storage, could get some of this stuff, because I know some of the officers were ready to go on this to be able to review all of this information. I really am looking forward to see how the community initiative takes hold. I imagine there's going to be quite a few businesses that get excited about being involved with this. So thank you for doing all this and keep going. Yay, Mikey. Oh, sorry. York.
Thank
Thanks a
you
lot.
very much.
Are there other
Thank you.
comments? I get the sense that for a good long while, we've all known or should have known that pretty much everywhere we go, we are on a camera somewhere. However, this seems to be taking it to another level of possibly integrating a lot of cameras and data sharing, which probably is a very good thing for our detectives.
Commissioner, I want to say one thing, Commissioner, about your comment. I mean, it is a great thing. I mean, for us to be able to share information with Kansas City, Missouri on crime data, because those guys are jumping across state line on a daily basis. And for us to have real-time data and for us to share information with Missouri and other agencies that border us, it's such a great move in the right direction for solving crimes.
Right. I'm looking at it from the crime solving aspect for sure. I'm also kind of looking at it from my own personal perspective. Like I said, if you're not aware that you're on camera everywhere you go in a community, you should be. Anything else from any of the other committee members? I do want to thank you I can't even imagine the time and effort that's been put into it. Alan House and the police department team that's worked on it, and it's a long time coming. And yet here we are finally. So just in time for us all to get back out and do things in the community. So.
Sheriff, this is Alan House, Assistant County Administrator, if I might. I mean, I think you heard about the benefits of the police department. I just, from an organizational perspective, and you just touched on this, I think it's also just worth noting that there was a lot of collaboration across, all different parts of the UG to make this happen, from Casey Meyer and the legal department working on policy to technology, both police technology group and the UG technology group. And it really, it was one of those kind of, you go slow to go fast. It took a lot of time on the selection and on the development of and working with police department on what it was that their officers needed and wanted. And so it wasn't something that was, sort of handed and said, this is what you'll have. This is what they, it was pulled in a sense. And so it was, I just thought it is a great sort of model of collaboration and kind of the way we try and do things, I think across the UG, and just wanted to make note of that.
Right. I really appreciate that. It's an excellent point. We've grown by leaps and bounds, I would say, in our collaboration efforts just inside our own organization, and it's very much appreciated. And if there are no other questions or comments from this committee, then we will just say a sincere thank you for the presentation. That is the only agenda item we have on Public Works and Safety tonight. And Mr. Groneman, as always, we appreciate you being with us on our committee. And we will adjourn the meeting, and I will hand our reins over to Commissioner Markley so that we can have Administration and Human Services.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, some committee members, staff, and public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19 requirements, in-person public comment has been suspended unless otherwise required by law. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. I will now call the meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call, Gilbreath,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Bynum,
Here.
Markley.
Here. There are no revisions to tonight's agenda, nor do we have minutes to approve, so we will move right along to our committee agenda. We have one item, and that is our CARES Act funding update. I will recognize Crystal Sprague to address us as usual. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you so much, and thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Markley, are you able to see my screen?
Hold on, I got to get out of my agenda. Yes, it is just starting. There it is. I can see it now.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks to the committee for entertaining the CARES Act team again this evening. This is for information only. And as Commissioner Markley said, my name is Crystal Sprague. I'm the lead for the CARES Act team, which is shortly to be disbanded, we believe. But for now, I'm still the CARES Act lead. This is our 7th monthly update to this committee regarding the CARES Act and the funding allocation that was allocated from the Governor's Spark Committee to Wyandotte County. So thanks for letting us come in again tonight and give you an update. Tonight's status report will take a slightly different tone as we are going to focus on the wrap-up activities for the CARES Act, as well as some information about future funding relief packages that are headed our way or potentially headed our way. In March, we'll have some more specific information for our last update and our final wrap up about the projects completed and services rendered within the unified government and Wyandotte County. But for tonight's presentation, we're going to stay focused on what those wrap up activities have looked like since the last time we saw you and what other funding packages could potentially be coming our way. So a little bit about our status and next steps. Since the last time we met, the subrecipients in our community have submitted their final reports, and that was at the beginning of this month. We had great success and collaboration with many agencies across the county. I think we had a total of 68 subrecipients, and that does not count some 80 small businesses that also participated in our reporting process. And we've had really great compliance with that reporting. So a big acknowledgement to those subrecipients who have been reporting to us every month in a very complicated reporting process that we have to maintain to get information to the state of Kansas. We also have started the transition of our CARES Act team back to their normal duties. So that's a little sad for me because we had this amazing team that has been together since July, but it's time for them to return to their normal duties as our project is set to wind down at the end of this week. We'll continue throughout the month of March doing final reconciliation on spending for jurisdictional allocations. And then in March and April, we'll take some time to look back, reflect on what we did, what we believe we did really well, and some ways that we could improve moving forward if we happen to find ourselves in a situation where we have a fast-moving grant application process such as this. And then, of course, we'll start preparing for any potential audit that we would have either from the federal level or from the state level, but being prepared for that audit and internally as well as we look back at the financial reconciliations and making sure we have all of our paperwork and documentation in order. So where are we at today? As a reminder, we had an original deadline for spend of December 30th of 2020. On the 27th of December, that spending deadline was extended through the second CARES Act or through the second stimulus package signed on the 27th of December. And that extended the ability to spend down these dollars according to the federal government until the end of 2021. However, the state of Kansas felt that they needed to be more conservative in that time frame. And given the fact that most counties were almost done with their spend and in compliance with the December 30th spend date, they only extended us through March 1 of this year for our CARES Act 1, with some consideration around a few other projects in the phase 2 and phase 3 of the CARES Act 1 funding. We allowed some continuation into 2021. Again, like I've mentioned before, most all of our organizations and most all of our local spend was complete by the deadline. However, we did carry over in some dollars in public health emergency management and to facilitate the CARES Act team for the first quarter of this year. So at the end of January, we had a total of 8.5% left in our balance. That's cash on hand. We obviously have a month worth of reconciliation to complete, and many of those dollars are already encumbered. Contained in that 8.5% were continued contracts for items through the health department, such as medical staffing and remote sites for vaccination clinics. So we feel really comfortable with that amount and know that we will meet our deadline as set by the state. We also believe we're going to have a little less than 1% held over past March, and this is allowable by the state of Kansas for audit purposes and for any administration purposes that we might have moving into April, May, and June as we prepare for our audit and complete our audit practices. The second is our public health response. And commissioners, these are listed in order that the local SPARK committee set out for funding priorities. So it starts with reimbursing our local entities and goes all the way down into building community resiliency, which were our small business grants. So the second being the health department, we have about 12% remaining there, but the large majority of that, again, is tied up in some of those contracts for staffing. As you know, the health department is doing a fantastic job of vaccinating and making that available to our residents. They need lots of staff to do that, and those contracts would have continued through the end of February and into March. So we have some reconciliation to do there as well. But we do have an amount here listed of about $19,000, and I'm going to address that piece of funding here in just a second, but I want to make sure that we're drawing conclusions about the total amount that would be left in those buckets. The next is to improve the ability of taxing entities to respond and recover. We have 0% remaining in that bucket or allotment. The next would be our Health and Human Services bucket. We have 2.2% remaining in that bucket, and that's the equivalent of about $79,000. We had two organizations within our community, one that sits in the bucket of public health response and one that's a human services or health services in the fourth bucket. Those organizations either needed to return a small amount of money because of lack of spend, or were not able to commit those dollars and be completed by the contractual term of December 30th. That's going to roughly amount to $98,740. So if you think of all the money that went out in the community with that small percentage coming back, we were really pleased at the ability of our local health agencies outside of the health department, as well as our community resources to be able to utilize those funds. As directed by the internal UG SPARK committee or working group, those dollars will be reallocated back to the local jurisdictions in the cities, and that will be completed by the end of this month. So again, we've got about $98,000 that'll be reallocated to our local jurisdictions. And the last item is to build a community resiliency, and this is where we focused on small business loans, and we do have 0% remaining. Early on, we had initially thought we would allocate or disperse about $825,000 in this bucket, but we were able to increase that by about $250,000, resulting in a push out to small businesses of about $1 million into the community. So we're starting to get a look at the tools that the state of Kansas is developing to get a better understanding of the overall approach that many organizations took. As you are well aware, each local municipality or each county was given an award, and we needed to figure out how we were going to distribute it and tailor it to our community. So we're starting to get a look into what that looks like for the state and then other municipalities. The Recovery Office has created this interactive tool, and it is available on the Recovery Office website. A couple of words about this tool. It was given to us by, or introduced to us by, the Secretary of Administration, Mrs. Burns Wallace, And she did give us a couple of disclaimers as we started to look at this tool, and it is interactive, and I would encourage commissioners that you or anyone in the community can get online at the recovery office and drill down into each one of these items. But a couple of items that Secretary Burns Wallace mentioned was, first, the dollars listed here are planned dollars. They're not actual dollars. The second would be, this is the total community investment, not just our CARES Act 1. So if you look at Wyandotte County, for example, it's going to have listed in a complete investment of about $50 million. Our CARES Act 1 funding that I'm speaking to tonight was the equivalent of about $37 million. So it's going to have the total Kansas investment in the community. Most importantly, the buckets listed here are not always consistent from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. The recovery office did the best that they could to bucket things in categories, but of course our definition of what business resiliency might look a little different than maybe Sedgwick counties would look. And lastly, this is just a tool. It's in an effort to provide some additional reflection into what the state of Kansas did with CARES Act 1 dollars, but it's a tool for insight. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to seek answers at the recovery office, particular to Wyandotte County. So take a look at it, play around with it. It was provided to us. It's up and available for any citizen to look at, but it's got some interesting information and comparisons. In addition to the investment dashboard, the state of Kansas and Secretary Burns Wallace is also asking for stories that we might have. Of course, the CARES team is going to have a lot of stories of community investment and what happened across our county in response and recovery. But those stories can be shared by individuals or commissioners by you. And it's as simple as going to the recovery office website and filling out a couple of spaces on a form. But the state of Kansas is very interested in how this money affected and how it helped response and recovery efforts in our county and across the state. So that option is available to you as well. So we want to take a look at the statewide distribution of CARES Act 1 funding. It gives you an idea of how our funding priorities stacked up against the state. As you'll remember, our first funding priority was direct county and municipality expenditure reimbursement, and it's the same here. But a little reflection on it, where those dollars were allocated at a state level. I want you to pay special attention to the public healthcare provider and human services area, funded at about 9.51% of the total CFR county allocation. This is pretty significant when you look at how Wyandotte County and the SPARK committee here locally prioritized public health spending. And then the next slide, also provided by the Kansas League of Municipalities and Secretary Burns Wallace, gives you an idea of how we might compare to other jurisdictions. So this is a snapshot provided by the Recovery Office. They happen to pick 5 counties, some small, some large, some equal to us in allocation, but not necessarily population. But it gives you an idea of how those counties took the dollars that were given to the county through the Recovery Office and then bucketed them or allocated them. I've also placed what Wyandotte County allocated their percentages to. Remember that definitions are not perfect here, where we might have considered small business and nonprofits separate. The comparison here buckets those together. So again, it's all about definition and how we defined it. Another example would be higher education. We took our education bucket and looked at K through 12, higher education, and educational institutions in general as one bucket, where the state splits them out for comparison here. So it's all contextual and how you would look at it. But I think when you look at the big areas, the municipality funding and particularly the healthcare funding, you do see something that's a little bit more consistent across the board as far as definition. So municipalities ranged in this group or this sample size from about 7.8% to 41% across the board. And then if you look at county operations, those ranged anywhere from 5.1%, which would be our allocation percentage, all the way to 40% plus. I brought attention to that 9% for public healthcare providers and services on the previous slide to your attention, because I think it's notable here to understand the priority that the subcommittee or the working committee put on our public health response. And that's shown here in our percentage of allocation at 33.68% of our total funding as compared to some of the other counties across the state. And then cumulatively, the 9% across the state for infused dollars into public health response. I think it's also important to remember that as counties were deciding on how they were going to respond and recover and prioritize their funding, we were in the thick of things here in Wyandotte County, but some of the other Kansas counties hadn't had a reported case yet. So, you know, it seems like just yesterday, but it was a long time ago that counties were asked to decide how and when they would spend their allocations. So just a brief little touch on the current funding allocation and then what is expected to come. The CARES Act now seems like old news when we start talking about HR 133 and the American Rescue Plan. But I think it's important to understand the three stimulus packages and how they are continuing on top of one another. The CARES Act, of course, effective April of 2020, HR 133 signed on the 27th of December of 2020, and the American Rescue Plan is currently in the House and in committee. This slide shows the comparison, direct comparison between the CARES Act versus the HR 133 bill. The CARES Act on your left gives you a pretty clear indication of how those dollars came from the federal government to the Recovery Office and then split by the State Finance Council. An example of that would be our county allotment, or in CRF round 2, the connectivity grant that we applied for and received. And I will take a moment here to give you a little update on that fiber project. We are in the permitting and technical design phase of the connectivity grant, or the CERG grant that we were awarded. And that project is moving along at a pretty good pace and is expected to be completed by the deadline. So that project, again, will expand connectivity and internet to some of the most underserved parts of our community and out west, and incorporate Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, as well as the school district in Bonner Springs. So in comparison, the HR 133 bill that was signed at the end of December is very targeted and very specific. An example of that would be the housing slot here that is set for rent and utility assistance. These dollars are using current federal programs, for example, SNAP or housing authorities, to increase funding in those areas. So unlike the CARES Act or COVID relief funding bill that was signed in April that came to the state, these dollars are using current federal government programs. One of those programs that I know will be of specific interest to several of the commissioners on the call is the rental assistance and emergency funding. We learn more every day about what this program is going to look like. Those dollars in the HR 133 will come to the Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance, or KERA program. They will be available for direct application from individuals and landlords, and can be used for rent, utilities, or both, up to 12 months of total support, and they can be used for past due rent and utilities. The eligibility criteria are listed here, and the applications open on March 15th and will close August 1. So I know that our local non-for-profits are very well versed and very aware of what's happening and starting to gear up how they can help our citizens apply for these dollars. But encourage anyone who is suffering due to the COVID pandemic and financial hardship to be looking for this, and the application will be available on the KERA website. And lastly, the current American Rescue Plan that is in the House right now is not finalized, but we believe it will be finalized with a total of $2 billion coming to the state of Kansas. It is unknown at this time what the final bill will look like, but we do think that 451 billion coming from that $1.9 trillion plan will be set aside for state, local, and tribal governments. With a little asterisk underneath, it's going to increase the SNAP allotment. So a little extra caveat underneath there. It's unknown at this point what the distribution process will look like, but it very well could resemble the CARES Act distribution process, or it could bypass the state altogether and come straight to municipalities. We just don't know the mechanics of that yet. One huge difference between this particular bill and the previous bill that I'm reporting on tonight is that it does allow for offset of revenue loss to state, local, and tribal governments. So we'll come back to you in mid-March, or kind of the end of March, and bring you some additional information. Hopefully we'll have more specific information on the American Rescue Plan and how it will affect Wyandotte County, but also bring back to you some lessons learned from the CARES Act current allocation and some outcomes. And hopefully my team will be with me that night as our last CARES Act activity, and we will be able to recognize them for the hard work and effort that they've put in over the last 7 months. Thank you, Commissioner Markley.
Can we
That would
ask
be
questions
amazing.
now?
We would be happy to welcome them to recognize their great work. Commissioner Kane?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you and who's your direct boss? Are they online right now?
Yeah,
Oh,
Mr.
good.
House. Yeah.
Alan, how are you? Who knew that you had such good employees working for you?
Got a great
They are
team for us.
outstanding.
Kathleen is heavily involved.
I tell you what, you guys did a great job. I don't know how you did it in such short order. I mean, kudos to all of you, and I would like to see your team. In fact, can you send me an email of all the names of the people on your team, please?
I sure can. And
All right,
thank you for
very
asking
much.
for that. Yep.
Anyone else? Comments or questions?
Commissioner Markley, it's Commissioner Bynum with a question / comment. Crystal, in the HR 133, that was the one that came forward late December, correct? So is that where for Kansas, is that where the extended unemployment benefits are located?
Yes, that's correct. It was signed on the 27th, which was a Sunday. So it was really 2 days before the deadline, and it did have some extended unemployment benefits attached. Yes.
We have heard countless sad stories. I mean, actually horrifying, with regard to our Kansas Department of Labor's inability to handle just the regular unemployment, let alone any of the pandemic unemployment or the extended benefits. Is there a role for any of us here to play in some sort of advocacy? I mean, they could sure use an Allen House right now, I guess, is part of what I want to say. But what role can we play as a government, as elected officials? I mean, beyond what we as elected officials are already doing, which is turning to other elected officials and saying, can you guys do anything? Because it is really quite pitiful. And all I can think about is that person who truly has lost their job, and that is their income, and that is the way they're going to pay for their utility bill, their mortgage, their medication. I don't know what these families are doing. And I'm just wondering, what can we do to help them? I don't know the answer.
Well, it is a very complicated question for sure. I think what I know our commissioners always do is advocate for our residents. So I think that's where we start. I think also that just be aware that locally, your unified government team is also advocating at every chance that they get to say, hey, we need to make sure that we're standing this up. But I think when we talk about the citizens and how we can help them, I think keeping them aware of other resources that are available while the kinks get worked out of the infrastructure there at the Department of Labor. Is it a Kira program? Is it Avenues? Is it another program who might be able to assist them? And it might even be workforce development down the street here. But keeping those resources available to them. And I know we've done several publications right inside of the citizen to show resources. And I think that's going to be on us to continue to show those resources to our citizens. But as a complete aside, I think that this situation really speaks to the critical nature of infrastructure and IT infrastructure to be able to handle situations like this. I can't tell you how lucky we were here at the Unified Government to have a very nimble Department of Technology, but also some resources that were already on board with us. Because those investments have been made through Open Cities or Open Forums or our knowledge department allowing us to work remotely through 365 applications. But the infrastructure that we had, man, if the state could have had that kind of investment in the Department of Labor's infrastructure, I think that would have made a huge difference. Hindsight 2020, I think that they're really looking at trying to fix that now. But I think as advocates for our community, understanding that hopefully we never have to go through something like this again, but being able to invest in infrastructure, especially technology as part of our infrastructure, is going to be critical in having the Unified Government and Wyandotte County be able to be nimble and respond to citizens in times of crisis. I mean, hopefully we'll never have this again, but we will have some kind of public emergency, whether it be a storm or an ice storm or but having that technology infrastructure is going to be really critical moving forward.
Right. Well, I appreciate all that you've said with regard to that, and Alan, feel free to jump in, but I think the lesson to learn is to be nimble and be ready with critical technology infrastructure. So thank you.
Yeah. And I guess the only thing I'd add, is we've been making this kind of shift over time to hosted applications, hosted software, as opposed to self-hosted within our own data center. So for example, the website that we're moving to later this year, and other sort of key areas, because when you go from kind of steady state to this, that's really difficult technology-wise to plan for. You don't want to buy up here all the time because you may not ever need there. But having sort of a scalable infrastructure and kind of architecture, not getting too technical in that, means that you can respond when those surges happen, and they sort of show up in places in ways that you couldn't anticipate and really think about. But if you have a flexibility in how you design the architecture of your information systems, then it puts you in a better spot to be able to respond to it.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Other questions or comments from the commission?
Commissioner Philbrook, thank you for all your comments, Melissa. I really I have to vote yes on comments. Definitely well stated. And of course, Crystal, as usual, our rock star. We couldn't have picked a better person to be the lead on this, and thank you so much. And so, as you know, you're not gone yet. Like, the CARES Act committee may be winding down, but there's still a lot of cares going on in the background for sure. And Alan, thank you for your comment about technology, because we were, when you came on, in the process of trying to become more nimble. And so thank you for helping make that work. I do know that, because I get to be on some of the Department of Labor meetings, because I'm involved with Workforce Partnership, when it hit the fan with unemployment, they were just, I think that they were caught off guard. Some of the new people that had come on were caught off guard by how how poor their system was, how outdated. They knew it, but you know, you got to have the money and you got to get the approval from everyone to spend the money on it. And those budgets come from, you know, from the elected officials saying, yes, you can spend that money. Hadn't had that money allotted to them to spend. So I know that they really hit the ground running and were working really hard to get that accomplished. I can speak to the unemployment issues as far as there are some people who are definitely fighting. They believe they didn't get the right amount of unemployment, or they were not allowed to have it during the CARES Act stuff. And they are doing those hearings over the internet. The guys and gals that are working for Department of Labor and hearing those, they are hearing them over the internet. So COVID has definitely struck into a lot of things. And so a lot of those folks are working from home to hear those complaints and to help with the decisions on what's going to happen. I just wanted to share that with you. So there's a lot of people working really hard, and thanks again to our team at the UG. Guys, you were just heads above and in front of it. So thanks so much.
All right. Anyone else? Well, as always, we appreciate Crystal's attendance.
Commissioner Markley,
Go ahead.
Commissioner Ramirez has his hand up.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thank you, Crystal, Alan, to the entire team that has been part of this every member of the CARES Act team. You guys are just an amazing group that have been able to work through so many hoops and so many short deadlines to get this done. And so we thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do, because we're coming up with more COVID relief packages, and so that means you may need to come back and do it again. So thank you. Thank you for all you've done, and thank you, Commissioner Bynum, for bringing up about the advocacy and the resources, because it is. I have family who's currently trying to get through the Kansas Department of Labor and the unemployment issues, and so thank you for bringing that up. And I'm certainly going to do my part of making sure that everyone that comes to me with these issues are aware of the other resources that are out there in the meantime, until our Department of Labor can get their systems up and running. But again, just overall, thank you for all that you have done. It has meant a lot to our community. And so hopefully you guys can have a little good break.
All right. Any final comments? This item was obviously for information only, and it is the only item on our agenda this evening. So we are adjourned. Thank you everyone for your attendance this evening.